Hey, it's Chris. What are we talking about? Singularity. 1v1 card dueler? Does this guy even know what he's talking about? Well, we have Mindbug, Yomi, your Exceeds, BattleCon somewhere hidden in my collection, Wizards of Grimoire, the more recently World Breakers. Tons of things to compare it to. Why do I love this game? How does it compare to many of those others? Should it scare you that it comes with 3 rulebooks from the get-go? No, it shouldn't. I love it. Let's talk. So I say that sort of tongue-in-cheek right here at the beginning, 3 rulebooks, but this is absolutely incredible. This is the one thing a lot of those other games don't always give you. I'm looking at you, mostly BattleCon and Exceed, right? You have a rulebook. You have an extended walkthrough beginning how to play. You also have just a straight up condensed rules if you want something just to pick up and find very quickly. So the whole concept of this game is that you're taking the head-to-head approach of a card-driven dueler and you're maximizing it in a minimal amount, but a little bit more than some of those others that I've already mentioned as well, but just sort of in a completely different way. Essentially what you've got going on is you've got a 5 versus 5 character deck-driven game. What I mean by that is you have 5 characters going head-to-head against each other, with each of them pertaining and having 3 cards available to them on a turn-by-turn basis. The tricky part with this is, and the fun, exciting element of this is, that you can cycle between 3 of these 5 basically at will. The other interesting element is that, as I mentioned, each of these characters only has 3 different abilities to go along with them. And so as you use an ability on a turn, you actually cycle to the next one, and potentially to the next one, and potentially back to the beginning one. You can't use the same ability card more than once on a turn, but it gives you the combo-driven engine that you're looking for in a head-to-head dueling game, because the object of this game is to knock out your opponent's heroes. So the fascinating aspect of this game is, of your 5 characters, let's be more specific, you need to knock out 3 of your opponent's 5. And essentially, it has a little bit of a Summoner Wars buildup, if you will, because every turn, you're going to be getting essentially one of these little energies. RAM is essentially what they're called. And they're going to be useful because that is your essential ability or your energy to activate all of the commands and the programs that you have access to for each character. And potentially you'll have 3 characters. So first turn you get 1, second turn you get 2, third turn you get 3. And you might be going, okay, well, how does that play out, Chris? That's just going to be overkill at the end. Well, there's overload. We'll talk about that in a little while. The basic structure of this game, though, is you use your actions via the energy that you're given at the beginning of the round, and you go back and forth until someone has 3 characters knocked out. The phases essentially are gain your energy, take your actions, clean up. Now that swapping that I mentioned is the main key mechanic, because of the actions you can take, potentially about 6 or 7 of them on a turn, one of them is to be able to take one of your cards here, flip it face up, and then also flip up the abilities that were supposed to be previously face down. Now I have them face up for the sake of access right now, so you can see a little bit of what's there, but essentially that's also the main crux of this hidden strategic game. And that's going to be both the biggest blessing and the biggest curse of this game in a nutshell, is really the meta style that goes in with all of those other ones that I mentioned. BattleCon, less so to Yomi, but even a little bit with Exceed, of trying to know what the other person is having, but potentially also as well, remembering what you have in order to combo it. And it's going to require a little bit more overhead, a little bit more memory in the RAM style for you to be able to maximize that. Because what you're going to be doing is, at the beginning, prior to you even playing the game, you have 5 factions that are going to come with, at least what I have, 5 heroes. You're going to have 5 different factions that are going to be available to you. The only requirement for your team is that all 5 of them share one of these color symbols on the left side of the card. But you'll notice that all of these heroes, whether it's on team A or team B, as I'm drawing them from either side, they have different colors present, but potentially you may have ones that are on opposite teams at some point in the future on the same team, because they might share a color. They might also just continually to go head to head. And so the option of this card, you can see that as it gets revealed, or as it resolves commands, or as it gets reacted to, they're all going to have asymmetric abilities that are going to go along with them, and that goes into the different action systems that are available to you. You can see their health as well on the lower right hand corner, and so potentially a little bit of variability there as well. The game mechanisms themselves are rather straightforward, right? Pick your hero and then go back and forth until somebody gets knocked out. As they get knocked out, you get to flip new ones face up and rinse and repeat until somebody has 3 knocked out. Sounds rather simple, but the abilities, as you can see, the text on some of these cards is rather lengthy, and that's okay, because it just gives you more to process. And that's going to be where the most blessing and curse of this game is, because you're going to have to know a little bit of what the other person has, but also remember how yours, even of the 3 that your character has, in combination with the potential 12 other that are available to you on any turn, are all going to work together. Because as that RAM increases and your energy increases, you may need to be able to do different ones, and which one is cycled to the top on any given point also needs to be remembered, because you might have one, in this case, that was originally face down. You might be flipping it up only to have the right card on top or the wrong card, depending on your strategy and how you flip and choose that, because you can flip them over at any point, damaged or undamaged. Cards attached to them, equipped to them, essentially, either your own or your opponent's. So let's talk about those actions that you're going to be taking on a turn-by-turn basis, right? The first and foremost is just you have commands, essentially attacks, mostly actions that are going to be going after your opponent's cards. You're also going to have cards that will equip to yourself to give yourself a bonus, or you have cards that will actually equip to your opponent to potentially cause them deleterious effects as well. And those cards quite often are not changed attachment-wise, whether the card is face up or face down. It's just, if it's also face down, it's still not active, just like your character isn't active. So you get poisoned, well, flip them face down. They don't take poison damage, but that character is maybe going to be on the shelf for a little while, and how you want to deal with that later on. Do you have a character that can get rid of that equipment card that's poisoning you when you flip back face up? Can you get to that card cycled enough that your opponent doesn't have a chance to react and compound it and make it that much worse? That's the dynamic you're dealing with this game. Unlike your Senjutsus, your Ivions, your Exceeds, there's no positioning. It's just face up. You can hit anybody you want across the aisle. Face down, they're out of play right now. If your cards get knocked out, then they're just taken out completely. They're considered inactive. And so any cards that you had equipped to somebody else, any cards you had equipped to other characters, even on your own team, they're all removed. And so it's very simple and straightforward from that aspect. You're going to have the ability to heal. You're going to have the ability to do damage, different types of damage. And where that comes in is damage does damage. But in this case, you can see with Shiho here, she's actually got several different icons here at the bottom of her card that all correspond to different types of damage. And so what ones she's able to mitigate, either in attack or defense, are there. And so you're going to have abilities to mitigate that in several different ways, depending on what the character's specialties are as well. Equipment cards are called patches. You're also going to have special executable commands.exes, hence the name of the game. The other aspect you're going to have are reactions, essentially reacts as you may think of in any other type of game where someone does something and I'm able to activate this in that regard. The swapping that I mentioned, the big caveat there is that you can only do it once per turn. So once you do that, you are set with that team of characters until you get another turn. Lastly, as I mentioned, other previous games of this ilk, they have the concern of sometimes running a little bit longer. And so this game is taking a different approach, almost a Summoner Wars-esque, but with a slight twist. The overload that I mentioned earlier. Overload essentially is once you get to the 10th turn, i.e. you getting 10 of these RAM on a single turn. If you still can't have 3 people knocked out on the other person's team, every turn past that, you gain an additional overload token. So on the 11th turn, you're going to get 1 overload token. On the 12th turn, you're going to get 2. And what that does is that does undefendable, unreducible damage to your characters, all of them that are active for each one. So turn 11, all of your characters take 1 damage. Turn 12, all of your characters take 2 damage. Turn 13, etc. So it really forces you to attack and be aggressive and to be smart about your combo making. And that's the game in a nutshell. I'll be frank with you guys. I'm biased. I am the target audience for a game like this. You don't end up with all of those other games in my collection, and not love what they are absolutely bringing to this table as something different, because that was my biggest concern. Overhead wise, rules wise, difference wise than all of those others, right? Does it check those boxes? It absolutely does. If you were a fan of some of those others, but there's too much randomness, this is going to get rid a lot of the randomness from that aspect, and that's the first big pro. You only have a stack of 3 abilities here, and these 3 abilities you're gonna know, because you get to stack them in whatever order you want at the beginning of the game, meaning you can put out a combo to set yourself off right away as soon as possible. And all of them are going to be knowns. So it's not this, what order are they going to come in? How are they going to be able to interact? You know everything that's in your deck because there's not that many of them, and they're all encapsulated in just 3 card combos for each character. The other aspect that I have to say, even though I'm not the biggest person from that aspect, this art is just absolutely fantastic, folks. This is absolutely tremendous. This is some of the best art I have seen on any prototype in a long time. And this is probably second right now of ones I've recently played to, say, more recently, Old King's Crown. And so I just love what they're bringing aesthetically to the table. Not that that's a huge make it or break it whatsoever in the first place. The other big pro of this game is that all of these characters are so unique. And they're fun. And they do things just so differently with all 5 of the factions and all 5 characters, say, for either side here on each individual team, which is saying something, which it sort of mitigates some of the blessing curse that you get with some of the other asymmetric games, right? Where you end up with Mythic Mischief or even Exceed, right? Where you end up with a box of 4 characters or a box of 4 teams with Mythic Mischief, and you say, well, I just don't really like 1 or 2 of these teams. Well, that may happen here, but there's so much variability. And like I said at the beginning, right, where you be able to mix and match. So that 5 team might not be the exact 5 you're stuck with every time. So you can kind of mix and match. At the same time, they give you the ability just to say, here, this is what you want to do. You don't want to switch any of these up. We will list them all out for you. So you can just not even have to worry about deck construct, because that was my other concern. Learning about this and going, oh, geez, you're going to give me 170 cards. How much deck construction am I going to do? Because I don't have time to deck construct. Like, my wife has no interest in deck constructing. I need take it out, put it down, and play sometimes. And that's probably going to be its weakest point, is if you have somebody that's more looking at it from that aspect. The combo-rific nature of this game is going to be a little bit lost, because there's going to be a little bit more overhead in terms of that. It's going to be more like an Exceed, where, I mean, the cards themselves are straightforward, but if you don't know what your deck has and what your strength is kind of running into it already, you're going to be a step or 2 behind. It's not going to be the make it or break it, but as the experience level increases or becomes more disparagingly different, that's really where it's going to make the biggest difference. And that might be a little bit of an off-put if this is just a pick up and play every once in a while. But if you want the deck construction there too, having some adaptability with these cards and able to switch some of them out or manipulate them around because you don't want the 1, and the 6. Maybe you want a 3, and a 6 because you want to go big with this one. Or maybe you want a 1, and a 2 so that you can have just a quick run through every time and just blast with the same abilities from one character to build that engine with all the others. The other big con is some of the reacts, some of the actions that you're doing, because there's so much asymmetry, because there is a little bit of that symbology. The other issue that you might run into, say, with some of these iconography at the bottom of the card here, is it's a little bit confusing which one is which at first. And you kind of have to sort a little bit of that out with a little bit of the token combination there, but it's nothing dramatic. But it's going to take you a couple turns at least to get used to, okay, when do I actually do the reacts? When do I actually do the timings of a few of these intermittent actions? How do I equip them across other people's? When do I exactly take them off when they execute the commands? So there's a little bit of a timing issue that, clarification was a little necessary of rereading a few times. Nothing overwhelming though. And again, the 3 rulebooks that I mentioned at the very beginning, right? It does a really pretty good job, actually. It kind of takes the Exceed rulebook, where my biggest criticism is sometimes they have some edge cases in there that you're just kind of left scratching your head on. And it eliminates most of that as well already at this point. The other con that I have to mention at this point, right? How good is your RAM? And I don't mean the energy form, but how much is your personal RAM going to be good at this? Because you need to remember not only what 3 are in each stack. I mean, you can look at them anytime, but you also have to remember, okay, which one is deactivated and which one is on top of the deactivation, because if I flip it over at the wrong time, you know, you make that substitution, sports analogy there wise, at the wrong time with the wrong swap, you know, instead of giving you the leg up, you're actually going to maybe set yourself back. And so that's going to be the other big, can I remember this well enough? Sort of more like a BattleCon, if you will, with the perfect information of the cycling through the cards so that you know what I know, what they know, what they think you're going to do in that sense. But you ultimately are the one responsible for all of that. And that's probably going right into the other biggest con is, unlike, say, your battle cons or your exceeds or even your Yomis, where you have an idea of what the other person is going to do. This doesn't really give you any flavor or any heads up about what the other person is going to do. You don't have, at least at my time of my filming this, a list, say, of what the other team's abilities are or what the other team's characteristics are. So that's the other reason that I have it set up in the camera like this in the first place, right? So they're all facing the same way. So if you wanted to read all of these, you could. But normally what you've got going on is you've got this sort of head-to-head thing going, and then these are all flipped over and these are facing this way. So you can't read that much text upside down. You're never going to remember what half of the other team's cards are, let alone even the ones that are face up on your turn, if they're going to be able to react or mitigate or deal with that. And so that's going to be the ultimate probably criticism or imperfect information if you're looking at it from that aspect, because you're not going to know exactly how they're going to be able to react to you. So who can build the biggest, baddest, most terrific combo first is going to be the winner there. And that's going to leave some people probably a little bit less satisfied. Not that the combos aren't satisfying, but if you can't stop the other person, that's going to be where your trouble lies. I mean, say with something like a dice throne, right? They can roll their ultimate, but you can manipulate the dice to sort of prevent them from getting to that point with the cards that you have. But if you don't know what they're trying to ultimately do, because I mean, you know, Battle Yahtzee, you're getting all of the same kind. It's very obvious. You can see that. Exceed, you have a list of what the other person's cards are. You have an idea of what their abilities, reactions are going to be. You at least have some basis formula of similarity. And that, in, you know, with all the asymmetrical awesomeness that this has, is not going to be giving you the same information in that regard as the flip side of that coin, if you will. So, final thoughts on this game. It's not like any of those others I mentioned. It's fantastic. I love the asymmetry. I love the different factions. They all feel completely unique. This is a solid overall, well-rounded game. And I say this as someone who has not always gotten thorough enjoyment out of the others, but this is just chaos with a head-to-head dueling with just the combos that I don't see with a lot of those other games. Like Exceed, I see it. The BattleCon, I see it some. Yomi, it has some. You know, Wizards of Grimoire, yes, but in a completely different way. And this just does it in a way that is so satisfying, of taking a card from this guy and then this one and then this one and then flipping one over and then grabbing one from over here and then just absolutely smattering. Oh, and then I got access to the second card there, and the other person is just wholly reeling on their heels. And that's going to appeal to some people, may not appeal to others, but then the other person gets to do the exact same thing back to you. And did you spend too much? Did you not save yourself enough to defend or to react to in the first place? And again, doesn't matter, because you can play it in probably another 20 or 30 minutes, just like those other ones that I mentioned. So you know what? If it is too much, take that. If it does go by too quickly in terms of that combo engine building, take that head-to-head quick elimination. You just play it again and see how better you can do with your new set of characters, different set of characters, or same set of characters as a whole. So all in all, super impressed by this one. Really, really, really enjoyed it. There you go. Stay classy. Have a great freaking day. Let me know down in the comment section below. What do you think? What else do you want to know? What else do you want to see? Come to GameFound. Check it out.